Hello, dreamers. I'm back with another dream. This dream was on November 10th of 2025. And I have to be honest, I have no idea how to interpret this dream. It is so chaotic. There are many things happening, and I just I don't think that I'm creative enough to figure out how they all go together. So it starts off. I was with three female friends at school. I think it was maybe like high school or maybe early in undergrad, college. I was, yeah, I'm not really sure. But we were standing in the hall together, and I knew that I had philosophy class in a few hours, but one of my friends wanted to go to the library first. Not the library on campus, but a library elsewhere. Like we had to drive to it. And so we all agreed to go there. This friend went to the counter, and well, we were walking through the library, and like toward the counter, where you would check out books, except this counter had, in this library, had like a slightly, like an extra function that was unusual. But as we were walking, I looked at a case of books that were displayed, like the covers of the books were facing forward, and I said I should probably read this big book that I had been thinking of, and I think the title was Matilda, but it was at my office. So I don't know what office I was talking about because I'm pretty sure I wasn't a professor in this dream, but nevertheless, dreams put different things together. But I was definitely thinking about like my current office in waking life as a professor. So we went to the counter, and what my friend was doing was she was getting a baby. Like I guess they handed out babies at this library, but it was a plastic baby. But it was kind of acting like, it was real, or she had been pregnant or something. Like it was plastic, but it was real, or we were taking it seriously. And so after getting the baby, my friend sat down in a chair, and she started feeling ill, like sick. And we all sort of were talking together, like, what should we do? And I think I was still thinking about my philosophy class, kind of not wanting to be late. But one of my friends looked at me and said, we should really take her back to her house. And so, I agreed. So we went to her house, and there was kind of an alcove that I think like had her bed, and it was like kind of small, but it had sliding doors. And she went inside, and another friend said, one of the friends at least, said she would stay. And so I, with the other girl, left. For some reason, I was then in another friend's apartment, and there was a couch that I was sitting on another couch opposite me. It was like in this narrow hall of some sorts, like, well, not a hall, but like a room. And there were two girls in kind of astronaut suits, but like, like Coachella festival kind of astronaut suits. They were like white and pearlescent and shiny and different colors. They looked very like artistic, I guess. and they were making out on this couch. And I had a duffel bag, and I changed into a blue t-shirt and jeans. I have no idea what I was wearing before, but I think I changed into something more casual. And I noticed that a purple shirt that I had had in the duffel bag fell onto the floor, and I put it back in the duffel bag. So after this, I was in my car in sort of a parking lot, and the door was open. And it was apparently after class, because then it was like the late afternoon, and I just didn't have any anxiety anymore about being late. I think like I had gone to class, and I was sitting, and it seemed like it was summer, but I had a winter coat on, like a long winter coat on. And what else? What happened next? Sorry, I have to look at my notes. I'm looking at um, uh, my journal that I write dreams in. Yeah, I think those are all the details of how what I was wearing and where I was. I was just sitting, and I was kind of resting, kind of how you do when you have just arrived home, or you've just arrived in your car, and you're kind of decompressing and resting. So I was kind of doing that, although I wasn't like exhausted or anything. And I looked up at the sky. I think this was the next thing that happened. I looked up at the sky, and I saw a crescent moon, kind of like how you can see the moon when it's still, like the end of the afternoon, but you can still see it in the sky early. And this crescent moon was made, like, it looked like it was made out of labradorite, like the crystal that kind of has a flash. It kind of has colors of like maybe brown and purple, etc. So it looked like it was made of labradorite. It was very pretty. It was crescent shaped. And then as I was looking at it, it started floating down toward me to the ground like a leaf. And when it reached the ground, it lost its crescent shape, and it turned into the shape of a rock, but it still had the same labradorite kind of flash to it. And I reached out of my car, I kind of leaned out to pick it up, but as I was picking it up, it disappeared into thin air. And in its place, I noticed this cute little amphibian. I think it's called an axolotl. And it was, I mean, they are just in general cute and have like cheerful, friendly expressions. So it was on the ground, like the pavement, and it was starting to um, come into my car, but I thought maybe it shouldn't come into my car. Like maybe, it's like an outside creature. Maybe it doesn't belong like in civilization or something. I don't know. So I was starting to shut my door, but then I noticed that a corner of my coat, because it was long, was sticking out of the car, and it was like on the pavement, which I now saw was wet. And so I took the corner of my coat back in the car, and like that was the end of the dream. So, I have no idea how to. I'm not usually so lost at dreams. There's something about anxiety about being late for a class that I was taking as a student. Um, you know, there were only other women in the dream, so all of the characters were female, and there were basically four of us, me and then my three friends, which for Jung, four is like an important number of the self. And so, that might be something interesting. The baby, like usually a baby indicates a kind of new beginning or a creative kind of idea or project that is being like birthed. But this baby was plastic and it made my friend ill, which of course my friend is me. Like all of the characters in a dream are yours, are you. So maybe there was some kind of, basically it was like a false birth, but you were getting it at the library, which is a place of knowledge and wisdom and learning. I mentioned a book that was big that I had been like maybe putting off reading that I really should read. I don't know the significance of the name Matilda or if that was even the name. I couldn't exactly remember when I woke up, but that was the word that I thought of. Um, it seemed like it was a book, like maybe a literature book, like Jane Austen or something. But again, the title was Matilda, so it was like the energy of Jane Austen. And maybe, I don't know. Um, I don't know what I mean by that, is what I mean. Like I know that Jane Austen talks a lot about like relationships and romance, and I don't necessarily mean that. I more mean like the time period that Jane Austen like wrote in, like that her stories were set in. And I don't know what the apartment means with the two spacey lesbians making out. Usually you want to ask yourself like what you're feeling. And I guess in the apartment, I was kind of feeling maybe a little bit awkward or that I shouldn't be there, but I thought it was okay. And, it was also maybe strange that I changed in front of them, but they weren't looking. And like, I'm not sure why I was changing. And I think this was still before my class. Like, why wouldn't I go from my friend's apartment where we dropped her off to the school? I mean, it seems like, and this is just my conscious self judging, like, it seems like I was being kind of selfish and like just thinking of myself. My poor friend like didn't feel good, and I was like just concerned with getting back to class. So what does that mean? Probably not something good, right? And and then like the end was more numinous. Like I was peaceful, the anxiety was gone, everything seemed to be like back in order, etc. Maybe my friend was being taken care of, I had been to class, everything worked out well, it was late afternoon. Like what does this beautiful labradorite crescent moon mean? Why did it fall down to the ground only to lose its shape and disappear when I tried to capture it? And what about the little amphibian? Like, usually animals indicate an instinct. And so maybe it's telling that I was trying to like leave the instinct out of like the natural impulse, like outside. But yet, part of nature got onto me because my coat was hanging out of the door and like touched the wet pavement. So I had to bring some part of nature inside. And I wanted to take the moon. Um, so, yeah, I just don't know. So, this is more of a dream of me just saying, hey, does anyone out there know what the heck any of this means?